the architect of her destiny, the tycoon. Kisses his mistress, unaware he despises the true owner of his empire. Breaking news flash. The strobe lights from 1,000 cameras exploded in a silent, white-hot discharge, freezing the moment on the grand stage of the Metropolitan Gala. Richard Stone, the London property titan, a man whose profile was second only to the skyline itself, leaned in. He wasn't leaning toward his wife. He was leaning toward his radiant, much younger protégé, Sierra Vance. And then he kissed her. It wasn't a peck. It was a deep, possessive public assertion, delivered for 1,000 lenses. A sudden, sharp, collective gasp was stolen by the click of the shutters. And in the front row, his wife, Eleanor, simply sat, her face a pale, beautiful mask, watching her world detonate. Before you dive into this story of betrayal and silent war, please like and subscribe, so you don't miss a single secret that the Torrens files will expose. 1. The stage of humiliation. The air in the grand ballroom of the Savoy Hotel was thick with the scent of lilies and expensive perfume. It was the annual Vanguard Gala, the absolute peak of London's philanthropic calendar. To be here was not simply to have arrived, it was to be the destination. And at the center of this glittering universe, at the head table, sat Richard and Eleanor Stone. Richard was a man carved from ambition and tailored by Savile Row. His charisma was a tangible force, a gravitational pull that drew everyone, investors, politicians, and beautiful women, into his orbit. He was roaring with laughter, a deep, confident sound, his hand resting on the shoulder of Julian Vane, the banking heir. "The Legacy Tower isn't just a building, Julian," Richard boomed, his voice powerful. "It's a statement. It's my statement to this city." Eleanor watched him. She had watched him for 12 years. She was the perfect accessory, draped in a deep emerald silk gown that Richard's personal shopper had selected. It was demure and appropriate. Her brunette hair was pulled back into a bun, so tight it gave her a slight headache. She was the quiet wife, the mystery, the one gossip columnists described as elegant but forgettable. She had no idea. She shifted in her seat, the silk whispering against the velvet chair. Her stomach was a cold, tight knot. This feeling had been her constant companion for 6 months, ever since Sierra Vance had joined Stone Innovations. Sierra was everything Eleanor was not. She was blonde, dazzlingly bright, and barely 25. She had been hired as a brand strategist, a vague title that seemed to involve being photographed beside Richard at every possible opportunity. Tonight, she was sitting just 2 seats away, radiant in a crimson gown that left little to the imagination. And Richard's eyes, even when speaking to Vane, kept finding her. "Eleanor, darling," purred a voice beside her. It was Genevieve Albright, a society dragon whose husband ran a rival firm. "You look serene. Richard is in such good spirits tonight. That new girl, Sierra, such ambition. Reminds me of a young Richard." The veiled insult landed as intended. Eleanor forced a small, tight smile. "Richard has always valued ambition, Genevieve. It's what built his empire." "Oh, his empire, of course," Genevieve countered, her eyes gleaming. "How lovely it must be to be so supportive." Eleanor simply sipped her water. The glass was heavy and cold against her lips. She knew what everyone thought, that she was a nobody, a quiet, mousy woman he had married before he became Richard Stone. They thought she was clinging to him, a beneficiary of his genius. The truth was a heavy, cold secret she had kept for over a decade. Her gaze drifted back to her husband. He was leaning in to hear something Sierra was saying, his head low. their proximity intimate and shocking in its casualness. Sierra laughed, placing a perfectly manicured hand on his forearm. There it was. Eleanor felt the blood drain from her face. It wasn't just the whispers. It wasn't just the nights he'd justified as strategy sessions. It was this, the sheer, brazen arrogance. Doing it here, in front of Julian Vane, in front of Genevieve Albright, in front of her. A waiter appeared, silent as a ghost, to clear her untouched appetizer plate. She watched him, an anonymous man doing his job, and felt a sudden sharp pang of envy. Anonymity. Freedom. Richard finally rose, tapping his glass for attention. The room, a sea of diamonds and black ties, slowly quieted. "Friends, colleagues, visionaries," his voice began, amplified by the microphone. He owned the room, just as he owned everything. "Tonight, we celebrate not only philanthropy, but progress. We celebrate the future. Stone Innovations is proud to announce our new charitable foundation, a £1 billion pledge to reshape the opportunity landscape for this city's youth." Polite applause. "Then, Robin." Eleanor clapped, feeling a sting in her hand. She knew this foundation. It had been her idea, a way to channel their immense wealth. He had dismissed it 3 months ago as sentimental nonsense. "This company," Richard continued, "was built from nothing. From an idea I had in a small downtown apartment. It was built on grit, on vision, and on a relentless refusal to take no for an answer." Eleanor's headache intensified. His idea. His grit. She felt the sudden metallic taste of bitterness in her mouth. She thought of her father, a quiet man who had built Tormes Industries, a manufacturing empire in northern England. A man who had died too young, leaving his 22-year-old daughter, then an art history student, a fortune so vast it terrified her. A fortune she had learned to manage, to grow, and most importantly, to hide. "But no man builds alone," Richard said, flashing that $1 million smile. "You need a team. You need people who share the vision, people unafraid to push boundaries." This was it. Eleanor knew what was coming. He would thank his COO, James Morton, an old friend of her father, and the only other person in this room who knew the truth. He would thank the board. He might, if she was lucky, give her a cursory nod. "And in the last year," Richard said, his voice softening, "I've been fortunate enough to find a new kind of visionary. Someone who has inspired me, re-energized me. Someone who understands what it means to build a true legacy." He turned, his arm outstretched, not toward his COO, not toward the board, and certainly not toward his wife. "Join me in welcoming the new face of the Stone Foundation and the future of our brand, Sierra Vance." The room was momentarily stunned into silence. This wasn't just an announcement. It was a coronation. Sierra Vance rose from her seat, an image of feigned humility that fooled no one. The crimson dress seemed to glow under the spotlight that instantly found her. She walked to the stage, not as an employee, but as a queen claiming her throne. Richard took her hand, pulling her to center stage. "Sierra," he said, his voice filled with an emotion that was nauseatingly genuine. "You've shown me what true passion looks like." Eleanor watched, motionless. The ballroom, with its 500 guests, had ceased to exist. There was only the stage, a brightly lit tableau of her humiliation. She could feel Genevieve Albright's stare on her, sharp as a physical blow. She could feel James Morton, seated further down, radiating a silent, furious energy in her direction. "And so," Richard declared, his arm around Sierra's waist, "I want to seal this new partnership, this new vision." He was emboldened by the applause, by the power, by the sheer audacity of his own betrayal. He looked at Sierra, who looked back with undisguised adoration. And then he leaned in. 2. The amputation. The kiss. It was the pop, pop, pop of the flashes that broke the spell. A dozen photographers from major papers and magazines had rushed the stage, their lenses capturing the moment that would be on every front page tomorrow. Tycoon kisses mistress at gala. Richard didn't seem to care. He held the kiss, deepening it. A blatant act of dominance. Sierra melted into him, her hand moving up to stroke his jaw. In the front row, Eleanor Stone She did not cry. She did not scream. She did not throw her glass of water, which was the only thing she truly wanted to do. Instead, she carefully placed her folded linen napkin beside her plate. She felt a strange, cold calm wash over her. It was the calm of a surgeon who has just seen the X-ray and knows with absolute certainty that the limb cannot be saved. The only option left is amputation. The applause that followed was scattered, confused, and nervous. Richard, finally breaking the kiss, raised Sierra's hand like a trophy. "The future, ladies and gentlemen!" he shouted. He turned, beaming, and his eyes finally found his wife. He was expecting... what? Tears? A supportive, pained smile? He saw neither. Eleanor met his gaze across the crowded room. Her expression was utterly blank. It was a void so deep it was more terrifying than rage. She held his stare for 1, 2, 3 seconds. Then, in one fluid motion, she stood. She didn't bolt. She didn't storm off. She turned her back on the stage, on her husband, and on the life she had endured. She began to walk, her posture perfect, her steps even and unhurried, through the sea of shocked, whispering faces. She walked past Julian Vane, who looked completely bewildered. She walked past Genevieve Albright, whose jaw, for the first time in memory, was slack. Richard's smile faltered. His triumphant expression turned to confusion, then a flash of anger. "Eleanor!" His voice, for the first time, sounded uncertain over the microphone. She did not stop. She did not look back. She pushed open the grand ballroom doors, the sound of her husband's voice and the murmuring of London society drowned out as the heavy oak closed softly, definitively behind her. Outside in the hallway, the air was blessedly cool. She took her first deep breath of the night. It felt as if her lungs were expanding for the first time in a decade. Her hand, which had been perfectly steady, she pulled her phone from her clutch, not to call a car, not to call a lawyer, not yet. She had to make one call. She found the number and dialed. "James," she said, her voice low and clear, though the tremors now shook her body. "He did it. He really did it." There was a heavy sigh on the other end. "I saw it, Eleanor. I'm right behind you. What's the protocol?" "The protocol is scorched earth," James replied. "The protocol is scorched earth," Eleanor echoed. The coldness returned, freezing the tremors in her voice. "Call Alistair. Tell him to liquidate my personal holdings in the Cayman Fund. I want the cash by tomorrow morning. And schedule the emergency board meeting. 10 a.m. Monday. It's time they finally met the real investor." 3. The secret of the steal. To understand how a woman like Eleanor could be so completely erased from her own life, you had to understand the Tormes. The Tormes weren't like the Vanes or the Rothschilds. They weren't new money like Richard. They were quiet, industrial, northern money. They manufactured the steel that built the skyscrapers, the turbines that powered the cities. They didn't put their names on opera houses. They put them on ball bearings and circuit boards. Arthur Tormes, Eleanor's father, had despised the flashy glitter of London society. He had raised his daughter to be intelligent, meticulous, and above all, invisible. The loudest man in the room, he used to say, is always the weakest. True power doesn't need to announce itself. When he died of a sudden aneurysm, 22-year-old Eleanor, then an art history student at the University of Cambridge, inherited the entirety of Tormes Industries and its labyrinthine trust, valued at just over $4 billion. She was terrified. She was lost. And then, 6 months later, she met Richard Stone. He was a struggling architect, brilliant and hungry with ambition. He had designs for gravity-defying buildings, but not a penny to his name. He was dazzling. He had no idea who she was. To him, she was just Ellie Tormes, a quiet student working part-time at the university library. She fell in love, not with his charm, but with his drive. He saw the world not as it was, but as it could be. He was the architect. She believed, could be the silent benefactor. She wanted him to love her, not the Tormes fortune. So she devised a plan, utilizing her father's fiercely loyal, old family solicitor, Alistair Finch. She created a ghost. They established Aegis Holdings, a private equity firm based in a tax haven, with her funds channeled through a series of offshore accounts. It was impenetrable. The sole director and beneficiary was listed as E.A. Tormes, a name that meant nothing to the financial world. Aegis Holdings made its first investment in a promising young architect, Richard Stone. When he proposed a year later, she was ecstatic. He loved her. He had no idea. She insisted on a prenup, which he signed willingly, laughing. "I have nothing to protect, Ellie," he had told her, "and I'll soon be making so much money that I'll be the one asking you for a prenup." She had smiled and signed, keeping her £4.2 billion secret safe. For the first few years, it was perfect. He built his first boutique hotel, then his first apartment tower. Aegis Holdings was his silent, supportive partner, always greenlighting his, admittedly, brilliant proposals. He thought Aegis was a faceless European fund. Eleanor, meanwhile, played the part of the supportive, modest wife. She managed their homes, hosted small dinners, and secretly ran Aegis. She was the one who greenlit land purchases. She was the one who scrutinized zoning laws. She was the one who studied the market, funneling her father's meticulous genius into spreadsheets and risk assessments. Stone Innovations became an empire. Richard became a media god. And slowly, he began to believe his own press. He forgot the struggling architect. He forgot the small initial fund that took a risk on him. He believed, with the zealotry of a true narcissist, that he had done it alone. And as he grew, Eleanor shrank. He began to see her as he saw his first modest apartment, a relic of his humble past. She was too quiet, too simple. He needed someone to match his energy. Eleanor saw the change. She saw the new assistants, the late nights, the emotional distance. But she was trapped in the gilded cage she had built herself. If she revealed the truth, that she was not just his wife, but his owner, it would detonate the one thing she had always wanted, the belief that he had, at some point, loved her and not her money. James Morton, her father's former COO, and the one Stone Innovations board member she had personally installed as Aegis Holdings representative, had warned her. "He's spiraling, Eleanor," James had told her a year ago in a secret meeting at her club. "He's leveraging company assets for vanity projects. The Legacy Tower is a money pit. He's cooking the numbers on the projections to make it look good. He's ambitious. He's reckless," James countered, "and he's disrespectful, not just to the board, but to you. You built this. Don't let this peacock burn your father's legacy to the ground." Then came Sierra. Sierra was the final, brutal escalation. It wasn't just infidelity. It was a public replacement. He wasn't just cheating on his wife. He was installing his mistress in the company that she owned. When Eleanor walked out of the gala, she wasn't just walking out on her marriage. She was walking out on the ghost of Ellie Tormes. The quiet, supportive, invisible wife was gone. Alistair Finch, her solicitor, had been waiting for this call for 5 years. He had the Armageddon files ready. When James called him from the palace lobby, Alistair's only response was, "It's about time." Eleanor spent the night not in their Mayfair penthouse, Richard's penthouse, but in a secure suite at the Ritz Hotel, a hotel her father had always preferred. She didn't sleep. She sat by the window, watching the lights of the city she owned, and methodically dismantled her husband's life, one email and one phone call at a time. She transferred the liquidity from the Cayman Fund to a new master account in her full legal name, Eleanor Tormes Stone. She had Alistair draft the emergency motions. She reviewed the final, devastating audit of the Legacy Tower project, proving Richard had been channeling millions into offshore accounts in Sierra Vance's name. She had shielded him from his own greed for years, quietly covering his mistakes, redirecting funds to mask his failures. Not anymore. The sun rose over Hyde Park, and Eleanor, dressed in a simple, severe charcoal suit, drank her first cup of coffee. It tasted like victory. 4. Contempt of the board, Hivil. Richard woke up on Monday morning to a splitting headache and a public relations hurricane. His phone was a nuclear bomb of missed calls and messages. The front page of the Daily Mail was a full-bleed photo of the kiss, headlined, "Mistress from Riches to Ruin. Stone dumps wife in gala scandal." Vanity Fair had an online piece titled, "The Silent Mrs. Stone Finally Speaks by Walking Out." He was furious, not with himself, but with Eleanor. How dare she? How dare she humiliate him by walking out? She was supposed to be the quiet one. She was supposed to sit there, take it, and then they'd have a civilized argument at home. She had made him look like the villain, and he stormed into the Stone Innovations offices at 8 a.m., barking at his secretary, "Get me Sierra and get me legal! Get!" Sierra arrived, looking rattled for the first time. "Richard, the press is everywhere. They're calling my family. They're saying horrible things." "Let them talk," Richard snapped, pulling her into his office. "This is a power play, that's all. Eleanor is having a little tantrum. We're going to shut it down. Today." "How?" "By cutting her off and firing her only ally on the board, James Morton." Richard paced. His energy vibrated with malice. "He's always been her little spy. He represents Aegis. I'm calling an emergency meeting, exposing him for financial malfeasance. I'll make something up, who cares? And I'll install Sierra in his seat." "On the board?" Sierra's eyes widened with greed. "On the board," he confirmed. "Aegis Holdings has 60%. Yes, but they are a silent partner. They have never voted against me. They vote with the CEO. That's the deal. My 30% plus the 10% from the other board members gives me the majority over Morton. He's out. You're in. And when Eleanor comes crawling back, she'll find her allowance cut and her friend fired." He was so engrossed in his own plan that he barely registered his secretary calling. "Sir, you have an email from Alistair Finch's office on behalf of Aegis Holdings." "What?" Richard grabbed the printout. It was a formal notification. An emergency board meeting had been called for 10 a.m. The agenda item, a full audit and review of the Legacy Tower project, and a vote on the removal of Richard Stone as CEO. Richard laughed. It was a cold, sharp sound. "They've challenged me. That old fool Morton. He thinks he can scare me." He looked at Sierra. "He's provoked a war he can't win. Aegis has no authority to remove me. The CEO position is unassailable." He tore up the memo. "Come on. I'm going to enjoy firing him to his face." At 9:58 a.m., Richard Stone strode into the 50th floor boardroom. It was a cathedral of glass and steel, overlooking the city he thought he owned. The board members were already there, a collection of stony-faced men and one woman, Genevieve's sister, who looked terrified. James Morton was at one end of the table, looking calm. "James," Richard said, his voice dripping condescension as he took the head seat. "A bold move, calling a meeting to overthrow me. Did you forget who I am? Did you forget who signs your checks?" "I know exactly who you are, Richard," James said, his voice even. "And I know exactly who signs the checks. Let's wait for the representative from Aegis Holdings before we begin." Richard scoffed. "Aegis doesn't send representatives. They send proxy forms, and they always vote with me. So let's get this over with." The boardroom doors opened. It wasn't a lawyer. It wasn't a banker. It was Eleanor. She was no longer the woman from the gala. The emerald silk was gone, replaced by a charcoal gray suit, severe and perfectly tailored. Her hair wasn't in a demure bun. It was pulled back into a tight, powerful ponytail. She carried a leather briefcase. Beside her was a man Richard vaguely recognized, Alistair Finch, a dry-as-dust solicitor. Richard's blood ran cold. "Eleanor, what is this? This is a closed-door board meeting. You can't be here." Eleanor didn't look at him. She walked to the empty seat directly across from him, the one reserved for the principal shareholder. She sat down. Alistair Finch stood behind her. "Mrs. Stone," James Morton said formally, "thank you for coming on such short notice." "What is going on?" Richard demanded, raising his voice. Eleanor finally looked at him. Her eyes were not sad or angry. They were the color of steel. "You're right, Richard," she said, her voice clear and strong, echoing in the silent room. "This is a closed-door board meeting, and I am here representing the majority shareholder." Richard stared. "You? You represent them? Did James manipulate you into this? This is a joke." "Alistair," Eleanor said simply. The old solicitor stepped forward and began placing a thick, bound document in front of every board member. "Aegis Holdings," Alistair began, his sharp voice cutting the tension, "is a registered private equity firm. It is, and has been for 12 years, the sole funding entity for the corporation known as Stone Innovations. Aegis Holdings controls 60% of the voting stock in this company. Its board consists of one person, the sole managing director and 100% beneficiary of the Torms Trust, which is Aegis Holdings." He paused, letting the weight of the words settle. "Ladies and gentlemen of the board," Alistair said, "allow me to formally introduce you to your investor, Mrs. Eleanor Torms Stone." The silence in the boardroom was absolute. It was so quiet that the sound of a single paper rustling, as Genevieve's sister nervously flipped a page, was like a gunshot. Richard Stone's face went through a rapid, grotesque series of transformations. First, blank confusion. Then, a sick, dawning comprehension. Then, a dark, purple rage. "You," he croaked, his voice breaking. "You, Ellie!" "My name is Eleanor," she stated, "and you will address me as Mrs. Stone." This is fraud," Richard stammered, leaping out of his seat. "You misled me. You lied to me for 12 years. This is my company. I built this." "You built nothing," Eleanor said, her voice cutting through his hysteria. "You were an architect with a blueprint. I bought the land. I paid for the steel. I funded the payroll. Stone Innovations was a subsidiary of my company, Richard, a company I allowed you to run, believing you were a partner, not a parasite." She pulled her gaze from him, addressing the stunned board. "Gentlemen, we are here today because Mr. Stone has been actively sabotaging this corporation for the last 2 years. He has done so by funneling company resources into a personal vanity project, the Legacy Tower, which our independent auditors," she nodded to Alistair, who distributed a second set of documents, "have confirmed is currently £1.2 billion over budget and is structurally defective." James Morton interjected. I tried to warn the board. Mr. Stone provided falsified projections to hide the losses. Furthermore, Eleanor continued, Mr. Stone has been misappropriating funds for personal use. Specifically, the transfer of £3 million to an offshore account in the name of Sierra Vance. Genevieve's sister gasped, clamping a hand over her mouth. This is slander, Richard roared, slamming his fists on the table. You, a housewife, think you can come in here with these lies? They are not lies, Mr. Stone. Alistair Finch's voice was razor sharp. We have the wire receipts. We have the bank records. You used company funds to purchase her apartment, her car, and as of last week, a 2-carat diamond ring, all classified as promotional and marketing expenditures. Richard was cornered. He was a trapped predator, and now he turned vicious. You did this, he screamed at Eleanor. You set me up. You let me believe I was in charge, just so you could pull the rug out. What kind of sick game is this? You were jealous. You were jealous of Sierra. You were jealous of my success. Eleanor rose slowly. She was 2 inches shorter than him, but in that moment, she towered over him. I was not jealous of your success, Richard. I was proud of it. I funded it. I celebrated it. I did everything anonymously because I was a fool. I was a fool who believed you loved me and that my money would poison that. Her voice was ice. But you didn't need my money to poison you. Your ego did that all by itself. You disrespected me in private for years. I tolerated it. You minimized me. You manipulated me. You made me feel small. I tolerated it. But on Saturday night, you disrespected my father's legacy. You used the company he built to publicly humiliate me and crown your mistress. And that, Richard, I will not tolerate. She looked to the board. The agenda item for this meeting is a vote to remove Richard Stone as CEO, effective immediately, for gross negligence, misappropriation of funds, and breach of fiduciary duty. James, please proceed with the vote. Wait! Richard shrieked, his composure utterly shattered. He was sweating through his expensive shirt. You can't! The shares, my 30%! Your 30%, Alistair interjected, was not earned, Mr. Stone. It was a gift of stock from Aegis Holdings. A gift that, per the key clause in your employment contract, is forfeited upon termination for cause. You, Richard, own nothing. You never did. Richard looked at the faces around the table. They were not his allies. They were investors on a sinking ship, and Eleanor had just thrown them the only lifeline. All in favor of the motion to remove Richard Stone? James asked. Eleanor's hand went up. James's hand went up. Genevieve's sister's hand went up. One by one, every other board member raised their hand. It was unanimous. Richard stared at Eleanor, his face pale, his eyes wide with a terrifying, primal hatred. You witch! You won't get away with this! I'll destroy you! Tell them what, Richard? Eleanor asked, picking up her briefcase. Tell them I'm not a simple wife. Tell them I'm the one with the money. Please, you'd be doing me a favor. She gestured to the 2 large security guards who had just appeared at the door. Mr. Stone is trespassing. Escort him out of my building. The security guards, both imposing men who usually handled union disputes on construction sites, moved toward Richard. Don't touch me, he screamed, backing away. This is my office. This is my building. It was never yours, Richard, James Morton said, his voice laced with a cold satisfaction he had suppressed for a decade. You were only renting it. Richard, seeing the guards closing in, turned pathetic. The rage turned to a desperate, whimpering plea. He turned to Eleanor, his eyes wide and suddenly wet. Ellie, please don't do this. Think of us. Think of the 12 years. I love you. I've always loved you. Sierra was a mistake. A stupid, meaningless mistake. It was the pressure. You know the pressure I'm under. Eleanor watched him. her expression unreadable. She had waited half her life to hear him say he loved her, and mean it. And here it was, a desperate lie from a drowning man. "The pressure," she repeated, her voice empty of emotion. "Yes, I know all about the pressure, Richard. The pressure of watching the man you love turn into a monster. The pressure of hiding your own mind so his ego wouldn't be bruised. The pressure of knowing that one word from me could have ended you at any time, and not saying it." She shook her head. "It's over. Get him out." "No!" he shrieked as the guards grabbed his arms. "You can't. I'll sue you. I'll—" The boardroom doors burst open again. This time, it was Sierra. She must have heard the screams from Richard's office down the hall. "Richard, what's going on? Who are these men?" She saw Eleanor, and her face contorted into a triumphant smirk. "Oh, you're here. Did you come to beg him to take you back? Too late, darling. Richard and I—" "Shut up, you idiot!" Richard roared, struggling against the guards. "You have no idea what you've done." Sierra's smirk vanished, replaced by confusion. "What?" "Miss Vance, your employment at this company is terminated, effective immediately. Your corporate accounts have been frozen, and the company letting agent on the property on Regent Street will require you to vacate the flat by 5 o'clock this afternoon." You can't fire me," Sierra stammered, looking to Richard for help. "Richard, tell her." "He can't tell me anything, Miss Vance," Eleanor said. "Richard no longer works here." The color drained from Sierra's face as she finally understood. She wasn't the queen. She was the jester, and the show was over. "But the foundation," she whispered. "The gala. He promised me." "He promised you things that were never his to give," Eleanor said. She gestured to the guards. "Escort them both out." The removal was swift. Richard, realizing his pleas were futile, reverted to rage. He kicked and cursed, a volley of vile insults directed at Eleanor, at James, at her father. "You'll be bankrupt in a year, you simpleton." The door slammed shut, cutting him off. The 50th floor boardroom was silent once more. Eleanor let out a breath she felt she had been holding for 12 years. She sank into the chair at the head of the table. Her chair. The board members looked at her, a mixture of awe, fear, and deep respect in their faces. "Well," Genevieve's sister said in the silence, "that was thorough." Eleanor managed a small, tired smile. "My apologies, ladies and gentlemen. I prefer a quieter management style. That was an unfortunate but necessary house cleaning." James Morton cleared his throat. "The motion carries. Richard Stone is removed. That leaves the CEO and chairman position vacant." He looked at Eleanor. "The board is prepared to accept nominations." Alistair Finch stepped forward. "I nominate Eleanor Torms Stone as interim CEO and permanent chairman of the board of directors." "I second the motion," James said instantly. "All in favor?" Every hand went up. "It is decided then," James said. "Congratulations, Madam Chairman." Eleanor looked out the window. The city skyline, her skyline, stretched out before her. The Legacy Tower, half built and shrouded in scaffolding, was a testament to her husband's ego. "Thank you," she said. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to call our head of demolition. It's time to take that building down to the steel and start again." The right way. Epilogue. The architect of her life. 3 months later, the sign outside the building did not read Stone Innovations. It simply read Tormes Group. The 50th floor office, once a cavern of dark mahogany, black leather, and self-satisfied portraits of Richard, was now unrecognizable. Eleanor had gutted it. It was now open, airy, and filled with light, glass, and blueprints for projects that were innovative, sustainable, and, above all, profitable. The Legacy Tower scandal had been brutal. The press had feasted on the vengeance of the scorned wife. Richard, true to his word, had tried to destroy her. He gave scathing interviews, painting her as a manipulative, cold-hearted puppet master. It backfired, spectacularly. When Alistair Finch, on behalf of the Tormes Group, released the full forensic audit, the embezzlement, the fraud, the offshore accounts in Sierra's name, the narrative shifted. Richard was not a victim. He was a fraudster. Sierra was the laughingstock. Richard was now drowning in lawsuits, not just from the board, but from contractors, lenders, and the FCA. His 30% of shares was worthless, reabsorbed by the company. He had lost everything. The last Eleanor heard, he was living in a rented flat outside London, desperately trying to find a law firm that would take his case. Eleanor, meanwhile, had become a legend. The silent Mrs. Stone was silent no more. She was the matriarch of London, the Tormes Titan. Forbes had put her on the cover, detailing the story of the hidden multi-billion-pound fortune and the woman who had run an empire from her living room. She sat at her new desk, signing the final blueprints for the Recovery Tower project. It was being redesigned as mixed-income housing and a green tech incubator. It was a project her father would have been proud of. James Morton, now her official COO, knocked and entered. "Madam Chairman, the divorce papers. Final decree just came through from the judge." He placed the document on her desk. She looked at it. Stone v. Stone. It was done. She was, in the eyes of the law and the world, entirely her own person. "Thank you, James," she said, signing the acknowledgement. "He's contesting the prenup." "Of course," James said. "Alleges emotional distress and coercion." Eleanor laughed. It was a real, genuine laugh. "Let him. Alistair will have fun with that. Send him a £1 check for services rendered." "Services. For 12 years, Eleanor said. "He was my shadow. He taught me exactly what not to do." "That's worth something," James smiled. "Well, the new architects are here for the 2 p.m. meeting, and Genevieve Albright is in the lobby. She's chairing the new foundation committee and wanted to personally review the gala plans with you." "Send her in," Eleanor said. Genevieve, once her social tormentor, walked into the office, her eyes wide. "Eleanor, this room is stunning. I love the light." "We all do," Genevieve said, her voice tinged with a new, genuine respect. "We all do." After the meeting, Eleanor stood alone by the window. She thought of that night at the gala, the humiliation, the cold knot of fear, the flashes. She had walked into that ballroom as Richard Stone's wife, an accessory, a ghost. She walked out as Eleanor Tormes. She hadn't wanted this fight. She had never wanted the spotlight. She had only wanted a partner. But Richard, in his boundless arrogance, had given her something else. He had tried to break her. Instead, he had set her free. She looked out at the city. It wasn't just the skyline. It was a canvas. And for the first time in her life, she held the paintbrush. She was no longer the silent investor. She was, and always had been, the architect. The story of Eleanor Tormes is a brutal, shocking, and ultimately empowering reminder that the quietest person in the room is often the most powerful. She didn't just take back her life. She took back her name, her legacy, and her identity. Richard tried to steal her company. He tried to steal her name. But he gave her, in his blind arrogance, the one thing she never knew she was missing, her voice. But what do you think? Was Eleanor's decade of silence a necessary protection, or a mistake that allowed a monster to grow? What would you have done if you were in her shoes? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If this story of incredible betrayal and vengeance captivated you, please hit the like button. It truly helps the channel. And most importantly, subscribe and tap the notification bell. You won't want to miss the next story we uncover. Attention, everyone. Imagine this. A man has it all. Mansions in Connecticut, a 9-figure bank account, and the most ambitious, dazzling woman on his arm. But there's one thing he doesn't possess: respect. Not for the quiet, understated woman waiting for him at home. At the most important gala of his career, with his tigress by his side, he decides to humiliate his wife, to show the world how insignificant she is to him. But he makes a mistake, a catastrophic mistake. He forgets who he is insulting. He thinks he's putting down a nobody. In reality, he is insulting the only person on earth who holds the power to take absolutely everything from him. Like this video and subscribe to our channel to witness the world's most epic corporate justice. The Cat and the Tiger. The sunlight streaming into the breakfast nook of his $50 million estate in Greenwich, Connecticut was, in the opinion of Victor Sterling, aggressive. Too bright, too cheerful. And it exposed a single, nearly imperceptible smudge on the chrome leg of the marble table. "Amelia," he barked, not looking up from his paper. "The staff is slipping again." Amelia Sterling, his wife of 10 years, paused mid-sip of her herbal tea. She was not dressed in silk pajamas, but in simple, functional athletic wear. Her light brown hair pulled back in a neat bun. She looked like a woman preparing to run errands, not the wife of the man Forbes had recently hailed as the new king of New York real estate. She looked at the smudge. "I'll speak to Maria, Victor. It won't happen again. See that it doesn't." Victor was the CEO of Vanguard Developments, the fastest-growing luxury commercial real estate firm on the Eastern Seaboard. In 5 years, he had transformed a modest boutique firm into a multi-billion-dollar giant, with skyscrapers altering the skylines of New York and Boston. He glanced at his wife across the table. She was fine, pretty in an understated, forgettable way. She kept the household running with almost obsessive efficiency. The parties were perfect, the staff impeccable, smudges aside, and she never, ever bothered him with trivialities. She was high-quality background furniture, perfect for his high-speed life. But God, she was boring. His phone vibrated on the table. The screen lit up. Chloe. A slow smile spread across Victor's face. He picked it up. "Sterling. Richie, darling." A husky voice purred on the other end. "I'm looking at the press note for tonight's gala. You're listed as the keynote speaker. They're calling you the Visionary." "Are they?" Victor said, leaning back. "Well, they're not wrong." He caught Amelia's eye. She was looking at her teacup, her expression unreadable. He felt a familiar, petty jab of annoyance. She never asked about his work. She never seemed impressed. "Are you going to burn down the stage, babe?" Chloe said. "Just picked up my dress. It's the red Versace, the one you loved. The one with the slit." Chloe murmured. "Looking forward to it. You'll be at my table, of course, front row, where I belong. Send me a photo of the dress," he said, and hung up. Amelia quietly placed her cup on the saucer. "Was that Chloe? Your assistant?" "Executive assistant," Victor corrected her automatically. "And yes, she is finalizing details for the Vanguard Gala tonight. It's the biggest night in Vanguard's history. We're honoring our top partners." "I know. I have my dress ready." Victor sighed. "Amelia, about that. I need you to just blend in tonight. It's a business event. There will be a lot of high-level players. I need to focus on networking. I'll have Chloe with me to handle introductions and manage my schedule." Amelia's gaze finally lifted. Her eyes were a very clear, very pale gray. "You mean you want me to sit quietly and not embarrass you?" Victor bristled. "I mean, I don't want you to be a distraction. You know how you are. Quiet. People think it's rude. Chloe understands the energy of these events. She's a tigress like me." "A tigress," Amelia repeated. The word was without inflection. "I see. And what am I?" Victor finally folded his paper and gave her his full attention. He felt a surge of dominance, the same he felt when closing a 9-figure deal. You, my dear, are my refuge. You are the quiet harbor I return to. You run this house. You manage our life. That is your strength. Running boardrooms is my strength. Let's not confuse the two. Tonight, I need a tigress at my side. I ask you to be the lamb." He stood up, adjusting the cuffs of his $5,000 Tom Ford shirt. "I'm heading to the office. I'll see you at the gala. Try to look festive." He left the room without a backward glance. He did not see Amelia's hand close around the delicate porcelain cup. He did not see the tiny cracks that suddenly spiderwebbed across its surface. He only heard, a second later, the soft, crisp crunch as it snapped cleanly in two in her hand. Amelia looked at the two perfect halves of the cup in her hand. She did not flinch. She showed no hint of pain as a drop of blood welled up on her palm. "A lamb," she whispered to the empty, sunlit room. "Interesting." She calmly rose, rinsed her hand at the sink, and wrapped a napkin around the small cut. Then she pulled out her own phone, a simple, discreet model. She did not call a friend. She did not call a lawyer. She opened a secure messaging app and typed a single message to one contact labeled M. Harrison. The message was simple: "Initiate storm protocol. Effective tonight. 10 p.m. Ist." The reply was instantaneous. "Confirmed, Madam Chairwoman." "Are you sure?" Amelia looked at the smudge on the table leg Victor had pointed out. She looked at the broken cup. She thought of the red Versace dress. "I'm absolutely sure. They can have their party. It will be their last." The public execution, the gala, held in the grand ballroom of the Waldorf Astoria in New York, was a sea of black ties, dazzling diamonds, and the hungry, glittering smiles of people who either had power or desperately wanted to be near it. The red carpet was 100 feet long. Flashes popped as senators, tech billionaires, and New York society royalty made their way inside. Victor Sterling was the epicenter of it all. He stood on the mezzanine, a glass of Macallan 25-year in hand, soaking it up. Every banner, every customized sculpture, every $1,000 floral arrangement bore the sleek silver V of Vanguard Developments. "You look like a king," Chloe murmured, linking her arm through his. He looked down at her and grinned. The red Versace dress was magnificent. It was less a garment and more a declaration of intent, leaving absolutely nothing to the imagination. Her dark hair was slicked back, her red lips full. She was a tigress, just as he had said. She was a weapon. She was a trophy. "You are dazzling too, Miss Davis," he murmured, his hand landing possessively on the bare skin of her lower back. He scanned the room for Amelia. He spotted her near a quiet alcove, talking to one of the catering managers. She wore a subdued, elegant silver dress. It was a modest, almost severe Carolina Herrera in its simplicity. She looked beautiful, Victor supposed, but in the way a statue is beautiful, cold, distant, and completely overshadowed by Chloe's vibrant, living color. He felt a pang of irritation. Couldn't she just try to look like the wife of a tycoon? Couldn't she at least pretend to be excited by his success? A reporter from the Wall Street business section approached him, microphone in hand. "Mr. Sterling, incredible turnout. Vanguard has truly redefined the New York skyline. What's the secret to your Midas touch?" Victor smiled, puffing out his chest. He launched into his favorite theme. "It's simple, really. Vision. Audacity. Not being afraid to break things to build something better. While my competitors are busy with focus groups, I'm signing checks and moving Earth. You have to be a shark. You have to be willing to devour the competition." "And you certainly have," the reporter said. "The new Asca Tower is a marvel, but a project of that scale. There are rumors you have some very powerful, very quiet backers. The parent company, Ethelred Holdings is famously reserved. Can you tell us anything about them? Victor's smile tightened slightly. Ethelred was his one frustration. They were the money, the deep, endless well of capital that funded his vision. He had never met the board. All his dealings were through an intermediary, a stiff British lawyer named Marcus Harrison. They approved every proposal, wired every dollar, but remained annoyingly anonymous. Ethelred knows a good investment, Victor said smoothly. They provide the fuel, I provide the engine. They're smart enough not to get in my way and let me drive. And speaking of your team, the reporter pressed, nodding toward Chloe. You clearly value a dynamic partnership. Miss Davis is always by your side. Chloe preened. Victor needs people who can keep up, people who see the future like he does. It's an honor to be his right hand. And what about your wife, Mrs. Sterling? The reporter asked, craning his neck to see Amelia, who was now diligently checking a seating chart near the entrance. What role does she play in your success? This was the moment. Victor felt the whiskey, the adrenaline, the adoration in Chloe's eyes. He looked at Amelia, standing there like a stiff administrator, and then at Chloe, who looked like a fire goddess. He felt a surge of contempt so strong it was almost intoxicating. He wanted to draw a line. He wanted to show everyone who mattered and who didn't. He laughed, a short, dismissive bark. Amelia? Oh, she's essential. He gestured widely, and nearby conversations quieted as people turned to listen. Amelia looked up, her gray eyes locking onto his from across the room. You see, Victor said, his voice ringing out. To build an empire, you need two things. You need a tiger, and you need a house cat. He ran his hand down Chloe's arm. You need someone with fire. A tigress, he emphasized, who can hunt with you, who can take down rivals, who understands the kill. He grinned at Chloe, who was practically vibrating with triumph. Then he pointed his glass directly at Amelia. The entire ballroom, hundreds of people, followed his finger. Amelia stood frozen, the spotlight finding her. And then, Victor continued, with a shrug of magnanimous condescension, you need a house cat. Someone who keeps the cushions warm. Someone who makes sure the pantry is stocked. Amelia is the finest homemaker a man could ask for. She's simple. She keeps my domestic life organized so I can focus on the things that actually matter. Every king needs a castle, and she's a wonderful, quiet little manager of mine. The silence that followed was heavy and absolute. The reporter's smile froze. Chloe, however, let out a small, triumphant giggle. Victor, mistaking the stunned silence for awe, raised his glass. So, a toast. To the tigers, and to the patient little house cats who support us. Amelia did not flinch, did not cry, did not flush with embarrassment. Her expression remained one of perfect, placid calm. She simply held his gaze for 1, 2, 3 seconds. For Victor, it felt like a block of ice sliding down his spine. Then she turned. Not abruptly, but with a slow, deliberate grace, and walked out of the ballroom. Ah, she's shy, Victor said, trying to seize the moment back. Anyway, as I was saying about the Century City project. But the mood was broken. People were whispering. He had gone too far. He hadn't just insulted his wife. He had been cruel. Victor! Chloe hissed, her fingers digging into his arm, her smile gone. That was too much. It was the truth, Victor snapped, suddenly defensive. Let's go get a real drink. He pushed his way toward the bar, ignoring the stares. He didn't know that Amelia was not heading for her car. He didn't know she was in a service elevator, riding up to a private suite on the penthouse level. He didn't know that in that suite, Marcus Harrison and a team of 4 corporate lawyers were waiting for her, with documents and laptops covering every surface. It's done, Amelia said, as she walked in, peeling off her silver shawl and tossing it onto a chair. Her face, so quiet and placid downstairs, was now carved from granite. He did it, the public insult? Harrison asked gravely. He called me a house cat in front of 200 of our partners in the press, Amelia said, sitting at the head of the table. He toasted me for being simple. The lawyers winced. 10 o'clock, Harrison said, looking at his watch. Protocol is active, Madam Chairwoman. The first lockdowns are engaging now. Amelia nodded. Good. Freeze everything. Vanguard developments, his personal accounts, the joint accounts, the lines of credit. Everything. I want him to wake up tomorrow morning the man he truly is, a man with nothing. Interactive. Question. Theo Ban, Amelia đã có kế hoạch cho việc này từ khi nào? Là từ lúc Victor cưới Chloe, hay là từ khi Victor lần đầu gọi cô ấy là simple, đơn giản? Hãy chia sẻ suy nghĩ của bạn ở phần bình luận. The Titans fall. Victor woke up to the agonizing sound of a leaf blower. His head felt as if it were filled with wet cement, and his mouth tasted like an ashtray. He fumbled for his phone, groaning. It was 9:30 a.m. He had stumbled home drunk and belligerent, celebrating his triumph with Chloe. Amelia's car was gone, and her side of the bed was untouched. Good. He wasn't in the mood for her silent judgment. He checked his phone. 17 missed calls from his CFO, David Chan. 3 from his head of construction. A dozen text messages. Victor, call me. It's an emergency. Where are you? The Ethelred lines are frozen. Our main accounts are blocked. I can't make payroll. Victor, what the hell did you do? Victor sat bolt upright, the hangover fleeing in a wash of icy panic. What? He dialed David Chan. The man answered on the first ring. David, what is this? I just saw your messages. Victor, thank God. What did you do? Ethelred just called in our entire revolving line of credit. They're citing a breach of trust clause. All our operating capital is frozen. Everything, Victor. What? They can't do that. Victor scrambled out of bed and rushed to his home office. It's a glitch. Call Harrison. Call their finance department. I have, David shrieked, his voice cracking with panic. I've been on the phone since 6 a.m. All Ethelred contacts have disappeared. Their lines are disconnected. Their emails are bouncing. It's like the entire holding company has vanished. And Victor, it's not just the corporate accounts. What do you mean? Victor said, his hand shaking as he tried to log into his laptop. My security team just called. Your access codes to the Vanguard mainframe were revoked last night at 10:01 p.m. Mine too. We're locked out of our own company. That's impossible. His laptop login screen blinked. Access denied. His blood ran cold. He tried his personal bank, a private account with Chase Bank where he kept his pocket money. He entered his password. A new screen popped up. Account frozen. Please contact a bank representative. No. He tried his American Express Centurion card. He called the number on the back. Mr. Sterling, a polite automated voice said, your account has been suspended by the primary account holder. What primary account holder? I am the primary account holder. The primary holder of this corporate account, the voice clarified, is listed as A.M. Sterling, Ethelred Holdings. Victor dropped the phone. A.M. Sterling, Amelia, Maria. His wife's name. It had to be a coincidence, a clerical error. A horrible, catastrophic clerical error. Amelia. The house was silent. He ran to their master closet. Her side was empty. Not a single dress, not a single pair of shoes, only a row of empty velvet hangers. He ran to the ensuite bathroom. Her toiletries, her skincare, her ridiculous expensive French perfumes. All gone. She had left him. Fine. She could have her little dramatic fit. But how could she freeze his accounts? It made no sense. His phone rang again. It was Chloe. "Richie," she said, her voice sharp and brittle. "I'm downstairs. Your gate isn't working. The guard says my name isn't on the list." "What? Wait." Victor was frantically pulling on clothes. "I'm having some security issues. A system glitch." "Well, fix it. I left my laptop in your study and my card was declined at the coffee shop. It was embarrassing." "Your card? My corporate Amex. It's declined. What is going on, Victor? Last night you looked like a god, and now everything is falling apart. Fix it." She sounded less like a mistress and more like an angry creditor. "I'm on it. I'm driving to the office." He rushed to his garage, to his Aston Martin DB11. He pointed his remote key. Nothing. The garage door wouldn't open. The car lights wouldn't flash. A small green light on a new security panel he'd never seen before was blinking red. He was trapped in his own house. He ran to the front door just as a black car pulled up to the gate. A man in a simple dark suit stepped out and walked toward the keypad. He didn't use a code. He used a key. The massive iron gate swung open. The man, whom Victor didn't recognize, walked calmly up the stone path, carrying a briefcase. He didn't ring the bell. He used another key to open the front door. "Who in God's name are you?" Victor shouted from the top of the stairs. "This is private property. I'm calling the police." "That won't be necessary, Mr. Sterling," the man said, his voice placid. He set his briefcase on the foyer table. "My name is John Campos. I am part of the private security team, hired by the owner of this property." "I am the owner of this property." "No, sir. You are not," the man said simply. "This property, along with the vehicles, art, and furnishings, is owned by a private trust managed by Ethelred Holdings. As of 10:40 p.m. last night, your residency privileges have been revoked." Victor stared, his mind unable to process the words. "A trust? What trust?" "You are asked to vacate the premises. You will be allowed to take your personal effects, clothing, toiletries, etc. My team will escort you. A car will be provided to take you to a hotel of your choice, for which you will need to provide payment." You can't. This is my house. I bought this house." "The purchase, sir, was made by the Ethelred Trust on your behalf," Mr. Campos said, utterly unbothered by Victor's rage. "A courtesy that has now been rescinded." Amelia did this. It's her, isn't it? It's a divorce tactic. It's illegal." "I am not authorized to discuss Mrs. Sterling," the man said. "My instructions are simply to secure the property. You have 1 hour to pack a suitcase." "Or what?" Victor sneered, trying to regain his footing, his bravado. Mr. Campos looked at him, his eyes completely neutral. "Or you will be removed for trespassing, Mr. Sterling. And I assure you, you do not want the press, who are already gathering outside your gate, to get a photo of that." Victor's head swiveled toward the gate. Chloe was gone. In her place were 2 news vans. The first tremor was over. The earthquake had begun. Call to action. Show your support for ultimate justice by hitting the like button. The revelation. The next 48 hours were a descent into bureaucratic hell. Victor, humiliatingly escorted from his own home with a single suitcase, was dropped off at the St. Regis, New York. When he tried to check in, every single one of his personal credit cards was rejected. He was forced to use the last $3,000 in cash in his wallet to secure a room for 2 nights. He sat on the generic king-size bed, his world spinning. This wasn't a divorce tactic. This was an execution. He spent the entire day on the phone. His lawyers, a high-powered team from Skadden, ARPS, were baffled. "Victor, we've reviewed the Vanguard constitutional document," his lead attorney, Ben, said, his voice tinny over the speakerphone. "It's ironclad. You hold no equity stake. All your compensation, your bonus structure, even your property stake. It was all synthetic, tied to performance, and granted by Ethelred. They are the sole shareholder. We have never seen a structure like this. What does that mean? Synthetic? Victor yelled. It means you own nothing. You are a highly paid employee, Victor. An incredibly well-paid one, but an employee nonetheless. And the termination clause, my God, it references a morality and conduct rider that allows Ethelred to terminate for actions that discredit the parent company. What did you do? Victor thought of his toast, of calling his wife a house cat in public. It couldn't be. That was personal. This was business. It's my wife, Victor whispered, the terrible truth finally crystallizing. Amelia. Is it her? Your wife? What does she have to do with Ethelred? We're running a search on her. Amelia Maria Sterling, née Collado. Her parents were low-level software engineers. No personal wealth. No corporate stakes. She's a nobody, Victor. This is coming from Ethelred, not your wife. You don't understand, Victor said, his mind flashing back to the name on the Amex account. A.M. Sterling. It's her. It has to be. He tried calling Chloe. The call went straight to voicemail. He sent her a text. My accounts are frozen. It's a temporary hostile maneuver by my partners. I need a place to stay and some cash. Her reply came 3 hours later. Victor, I can't. My job? My reputation? I was your assistant. I can't be seen with you while this is happening. I'm sorry. I have to look out for myself. The Ethelred lawyers have already contacted me for an exit interview. He threw the phone against the wall. She had been his tigress, and at the first sign of blood in the water, she was gone. The news broke that afternoon. Vanguard CEO Victor Sterling fired. Partner company stocks plummet. Ethelred Holdings cleanse house in stunning move. What happened at the Sterling Gala? His name, his face, was everywhere. He was no longer the visionary. He was a disgrace. David Chen called him one last time. They're liquidating Victor, David said, his voice hollow. They're not replacing you. They're dissolving Vanguard Developments, selling the assets. Everyone is fired. 10,000 jobs lost. The whole damn thing. It was just a house of cards. Victor was drowning. 10,000 jobs. His legacy. His towers. All gone. Because he had insulted his wife. The power was too vast. The punishment too absolute. A wife, even a vindictive one, couldn't wield this kind of corporate power. On the third day, his money ran out. The hotel politely informed him his room key would be deactivated at 11 a.m. He was stranded, toxic, and penniless. Just as he was trying to figure out if he could sell his $20,000 Patek Philippe watch for cash, an email landed in his inbox. It was the only email that had managed to get through his firewall. The sender, Office of the Chairwoman, Ethelred Holdings. The subject, Mandatory Board Summons. The email body was brief. Mr. Sterling, you are hereby summoned to the executive headquarters of Ethelred Holdings, 1000 Park Avenue, 44th floor, on Friday, October 20th, 10:03 a.m. Sharp. Your presence is required to finalize your termination and discuss potential legal actions. A car will be waiting for you at your hotel. This was it. His chance to fight. He would meet this mysterious board. He would meet the real power behind Ethelred. He would make his case. He would threaten to sue for something. He wasn't going down without a fight. He would find out who this A.M. Sterling really was. He put on his last clean Tom Ford suit, the one he'd worn to the gala, now wrinkled from his suitcase. He tried to project the image of the titan he had been just 3 days prior, but looking in the mirror, he saw a desperate, terrified man whose world had been ripped out from under him by an invisible hand. The unveiling, the Ethelred Holdings headquarters occupied the top 3 floors of the most exclusive skyscraper on Park Avenue, one of the few on the skyline Victor hadn't built. The lobby was a cathedral of black marble and smoked glass, silent save for the hiss of the water feature. It was a place of quiet, terrifying, old money. Victor gave his name to the receptionist, who looked at him with open, icy disdain. "Mr. Sterling, they are expecting you." He was escorted to a private elevator. There was no button for the 44th floor. The security guard used a biometric hand scanner, and the elevator began its ascent, fast and silent. The doors opened directly into a reception area. A stern-looking woman ushered him through to a set of massive oak doors. "They are waiting." Victor straightened his suit jacket, took a deep breath, and pushed the doors open. The boardroom was stunning. It was dominated by a single 50-foot slab of polished obsidian table. One entire wall was a floor-to-ceiling window overlooking all of New York, a view that made his old office view look like a keyhole. Seated around the table were a dozen people, men and women, in immaculate dark suits. He recognized them instantly, and his blood ran cold. This was not just a board. This was a pantheon. There was Koji Tanaka, the most feared private equity head in Asia. There was Lady Annabelle Grayson, who ran the EU's largest private asset portfolio. There was General Marcus Phillips, retrainitus, formerly of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, who now advised the world's biggest defense contractors. And at the far end, standing nervously, was Marcus Harrison, the lawyer he had dismissed as a mere intermediary. These weren't backers. These were the people who owned the backers. These were people who could buy and sell countries before breakfast, and they all stared at him with undisguised contempt. "Mr. Sterling," Marcus Harrison said, his voice clipped. "Thank you for joining us. Please take a seat." He gestured to a single small chair placed in the middle of the room, several feet from the main table. It was the chair of the accused. Victor sat down, his heart slamming against his ribs. "This is a rather impressive collection of talent," Victor stammered. I wasn't aware." "That is precisely the problem, Victor," Lady Grayson said, her British accent cutting the air. "You weren't aware of a great deal." "I demand to know what is happening," Victor said, trying to regain his old bravado. "I have been ruined. My company has been destroyed." "For what? For a joke?" "For this is grossly unprofessional. It is tortious interference." "Unprofessional," Koji Tanaka repeated, his voice silky soft. "A man who publicly compares his life partner to livestock lecturing us on professionalism. A bold strategy." This is over, Amelia," Victor said in disbelief. "You are liquidating a $10 billion portfolio over a domestic dispute?" "We are liquidating a portfolio because its CEO proved to be a catastrophic liability," General Phillips thundered. "You were given a simple test, Mr. Sterling, a test of character, and you failed it in the most public way imaginable." "What test? Who is in charge here? What are you people to her?" Marcus Harrison looked at the empty, high-backed leather chair at the absolute head of the table. "We are the board of directors. We advise. We manage. But we do not rule. Our job is to execute the vision of our founder and chairwoman." "Then I want to speak to her," Victor demanded. "I want to speak to this A.M. Sterling. Where is she? Hidden away as always?" "That is true," Harrison said. "She has always believed the work should speak for itself. She built this firm from nothing, and her one rule was that her privacy remain absolute. She wanted a quiet life. She trusted us to manage her empire. But," Lady Grayson added, "she also believed in having insurance. She believed in placing her valuable assets in the care of someone she could implicitly trust. Someone who, by their very nature, would be underestimated." "What are you talking about?" Victor whispered, a nascent, sickening horror rising in his throat. "She is not hiding, Mr. Sterling," Harrison said, his eyes moving toward the main boardroom doors. "She was merely running late. She had to finalize the liquidation of your empire. The massive oak doors." Victor turned. Amelia walked in, but this was not the Amelia he knew. This was not the quiet, mousy woman in yoga pants. This was not the house cat. She was wearing an impeccable Armani charcoal suit, so sharp it looked like it could cut glass. Her hair, usually pulled back in a simple ponytail, was coiled in a severe, intricate bun. Her simple gray eyes were now the color of a winter storm, and they were fixed on him with a heart-stopping intensity. She carried a leather portfolio and was flanked by two lawyers he recognized from the firm of Wachtell Lipton, the most ruthless M&A litigators on the planet. She did not look at Victor. She walked with a silent, terrifying authority to the head of the table. The entire legendary board rose to its feet as she approached. She took her seat in the empty chairwoman's chair. Marcus Harrison pulled out her seat. "Madam Chairwoman." "Welcome." "Thank you, Marcus. Please, everyone, be seated," Amelia said. Her voice was the same, but the tone was completely different. It was crisp, commanding, and utterly cold. Victor was paralyzed. He was vibrating. He couldn't form a thought. "Amelia? What? What is this? Geese? A joke? You're one of them? A secretary?" Amelia finally turned her head. She looked at him not as a wife looks at a husband, but as a scientist looks at a failed experiment under a microscope. "Hello, Victor," she said. "Please refrain from speaking, unless spoken to. We have much to get through." She opened her portfolio. "Let the record show," she began, "that on this day, the board meets to ratify the termination with cause of Mr. Victor Sterling, CEO of the now dissolved Vanguard Developments portfolio." Victor finally found his voice. It came out as a choked gasp. You are A.M. Sterling? You?" Amelia looked up, her expression one of mild annoyance. "Yes, Amelia Maria Sterling. I founded Ethelred Holdings 12 years ago. Vanguard Developments was my pet project. And you, Victor, were my biggest disappointment." The silence in the room was absolute. The only sound was the faint ticking of the Patek Philippe watch on Victor's wrist, a watch he now realized she had bought him. "You," he stammered, his mind short-circuiting. "But your parents? You were simple." The word hung in the air, grotesque and foolish. Amelia actually smiled. It was the most terrifying expression Victor had ever seen. Simple? Yes, that was the point. My father didn't just mess around with software, Victor. He designed the core encryption algorithm for the first global-scale quantum network. He sold the patent for a sum that would make your entire net worth look like a rounding error. He and my mother hated the spotlight, so they retired to a quiet life. And they raised me to value one thing above all else: privacy. She leaned forward. I took that inheritance, and at 24, I founded Ethelred. I didn't want my name or face in Forbes. I didn't want to be on magazine covers. I wanted to build. So I created a structure. I hired Marcus, here, and this brilliant board to be the public avatars of the firm. I remained anonymous, the solitary A.M. Sterling, pulling the strings from a quiet life. "And I," Victor whispered, the blood draining from his face. "What was I?" "You," Amelia said, her voice clinical, "were an experiment. I met you when you were a mid-level manager at a small firm. You had a spark. You were ambitious, driven. I thought you were brilliant. I fell for that drive, I believed. Here is a man I can build with. Then you financed me." "I didn't finance you, Victor. I created you," she stated. "I founded Vanguard Developments for you. I cleared the path. I fed you the capital. I made the calls behind the scenes to get your permits approved. Your vision, your Midas touch, it was my capital, my connections, and my strategy. You were just the arrogant, loud-mouthed front man I put in place to take the credit. Because, unlike you, I don't need credit. I need results." Victor shook his head, denial battling with the horrific, obvious truth. But our life, the house, the parties, you were just my wife. Yes, Amelia said, and I liked that part. I wanted a partner. I wanted a home. I thought I could have both. I thought you loved me, Amelia, the simple woman, not the CEO of Ethelred. It was the perfect test, and for a few years it worked. But you became lost. You started believing your own press. You started believing you were the Titan, and I was just the house cat. She gestured to the lawyers. The gala was not your first mistake. It was simply the last. For 2 years, Victor, I've been watching you. You began to embezzle. Never! Do not lie! She snapped, and for the first time her voice cracked like a whip. The entire board flinched. The red Versace dress for Miss Davis, charged to a Vanguard corporate account as client entertainment. The yacht you charter in the Hamptons, rented by a shell company funded through Vanguard's discretionary budget. The 3-carat diamond earrings you bought her for her birthday, classified as partner gifts. You were not just cheating on a wife, Victor. You were stealing from a chairwoman. You were stealing from me. She pushed a thick folder across the table. That is a full forensic audit of your last 24 months. You have defrauded Ethelred Holdings out of approximately €4.2 million, enough to put you in federal prison for a long, long time. Victor stopped breathing. Prison. Amelia, please, he pleaded, his voice breaking. He slid out of the small chair and fell to his knees. Amelia, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I was an idiot. I was arrogant. Please don't do this. I love you. I've always loved you. Amelia looked down at the pathetic, broken man kneeling on the marble floor. Her face was completely impassive. No, Victor. You loved the idea of me. You loved having someone quiet to clean up your messes. You loved having a lamb so you could feel like a tiger. The insult? That I could have almost forgiven. People say stupid, cruel things. But you said it in front of my partners. You said it in front of the press. You compromised my position. You humiliated A.M. Sterling, not just Amelia. You mistook my privacy for weakness and my silence for stupidity. And in doing so, you proved yourself to be not only a bad husband, but a reckless, terrible CEO. She stood up. The board has voted. Your termination is effective immediately for cause, citing gross misconduct and embezzlement. Ethelred will not press charges. A small sliver of hope ignited in Victor's eyes. On one condition, Amelia continued, her voice dropping to an icy whisper. You will sign this. A lawyer placed a single document in front of him. It is a full confession and a divorce settlement. You will walk away with nothing. Not the house, not the cause, not the art, not a single dollar. You will admit to the fraud, and in exchange for my silence, you will disappear. You will relinquish any and all claims to my assets, Ethelred's assets, and you will sign a permanent global non-disclosure agreement, NDA. If you ever utter my name, or Ethelred's, or connect me to it in any way, the full force of this firm's legal team and the Attorney General's office will come down on you. You will die in prison. Victor's hands were shaking so badly he couldn't hold the pen. You built your entire identity on my money, Victor. Now you get to see what you are worth without it. He looked at her, his eyes swimming with tears. Amelia, please. I am nothing without you. Amelia felt a final, chilling confirmation. I know. Sign the papers. He picked up the pen and scrawled his name, his signature a frantic, desperate streak. Good, Amelia said. She turned to her head of security. Mr. Campos, escort Mr. Sterling from the building. He is now, officially, a trespasser. Victor was hauled to his feet. As they led him past the obsidian table, past the silent, powerful board, he looked one last time at the woman he had called his wife. She had already turned away, looking out the window over the city she owned. Her city. She was already discussing fourth-quarter projections with Lady Grayson, as if he had never been in the room. The New York Ghost. 6 months later, the cover of Forbes was not a man. It was Amelia. The photo was an austere, black and white portrait. Her gray eyes looked directly into the camera, radiating unmistakable intelligence and power. The headline was simple: "The billion-dollar ghost, A.M. Sterling, steps out of the shadows." The story detailed the shocking dissolution of Vanguard Developments, exposing Victor Sterling as a profligate, fraudulent CEO who had been living off the genius of his anonymous, powerful wife. It painted a picture of a woman who, for a decade, had been the most powerful and unseen force in global finance. Amelia Biedtia, it turned out, hadn't just liquidated Vanguard. She had reallocated its assets. She had taken the best projects, the few brilliant but overlooked engineers, and the soundest assets, and merged them into a new, leaner, more aggressive firm under her direct control. Sterling Corp. It was already valued at triple what Vanguard had been. Her days of hiding were over. She was seen in Davos, in London, in Tokyo. She moved through the world not as Victor's +1, but as the titan she had always been. The lamb was, it turned out, the dragon who owned the entire mountain. And Victor? He was a ghost of another kind. He lived in a $200 a month studio in the Bronx, the paint peeling off the walls. The NDA and the confession had blackballed him from the industry forever. No one would hire him. No one would speak to him. He had sold his Patek Philippe to pay the rent, his Tom Ford suits to buy groceries. He was a temp employee. He worked in the mailroom of a mid-level insurance firm, a job he had gotten by using his college degree and omitting the last decade of his resume. One afternoon, he was sorting mail when he saw the Forbes magazine pass by, his replacement's name on the subscription. He looked at Amelia's face. He saw the woman who had shared his bed, the woman who had organized his sock drawer, the woman he had dismissed so completely. He thought of the power, the money, the life. He had held the winning lottery ticket in his hand for 10 years, and he had set it on fire because he was too arrogant to read the numbers. He tossed the magazine in the correct box and moved to the next. His hands, which had once signed $100 million deals, now fumafe. Rough and stained with ink, across the city, in the 44th floor boardroom, Amelia Sterling stood by the window. "Madam Chairwoman," her new assistant Sarah said, "the Goldman Sachs team is here to discuss the Sterling Corp IPO. They seem very nervous." Amelia smiled, a real, genuine smile. "Good. Let them be nervous. Send them in." And Sarah, "Yes, ma'am. Please order lunch for the entire team and have them check the air conditioning in the engineering room. Those new quantum servers are running hot, and I want my people to be comfortable." "Right away," Sarah said, scribbling a note. Amelia looked at the city, the half-finished towers that had once been Victor's. Her new firm was already buying them, refitting them, finishing them her way. She had taken his name off every plaque, every building, every letterhead. She had built an empire. She had hidden inside it for protection, and she had been forced to burn it down. But now, from the ashes, she was building a new one. And this time, there would be only one name on the door: her own. The winter in the Bronx was a grim affair of cold, persistent rain. Victor Sterling stood under the awning of a bus stop, sipping lukewarm coffee. The thin jacket he'd bought at a thrift store barely kept out the cold. His mailroom shift was over, and he was just trying to muster the energy to take the bus back to his peeling studio apartment. A car pulled to the curb in front of him, its engine a low, purring growl that was alien to this neighborhood. It was a black Maybach, polished to a mirror shine. A chauffeur rushed to open the back door with a large black umbrella. A leg emerged, then a figure. It was Amelia. Victor's heart stopped. He physically recoiled. pressing himself against the dirty plexiglass of the bus stop. She was here, in his humble neighborhood. She wore a cream wool coat that likely cost more than his entire annual salary. She looked sharp, focused, and utterly out of place. "The acquisition is final, Sarah," Amelia's voice, crisp and cutting through the rain, said to her assistant. "I want the new server integration to begin Monday. This AI algorithm is the final piece for Sterling's core logistics network." Victor's blood ran cold. This building, the one he passed every day. She had bought it. She was here, on his street, expanding her empire into the last place he had felt safe from her memory. He must have made a sound, a gasp, a choked curse, because her head turned. Her eyes, clear and gray like the rainy sky, swept over the bus stop. They passed over him. Then they came back, their gazes locking across the 20 feet of wet pavement. Victor froze. He saw everything in that second. The man he was, the man he had become. The cheap coffee, the frayed cuffs, the hollow look in his own eyes. Amelia looked at him. There was no recognition. There was no hatred. There was no pity. There was no triumph. There was nothing. It was the look a person gives a stranger they've accidentally made eye contact with on a train. It was a brief, impersonal flicker of acknowledgement that another human being was occupying space, followed by an immediate and total dismissal. In that single, empty gaze, Victor Sterling was not her ex-husband. He was not the man who betrayed her. He was not even the man she destroyed. He was just a random, shivering man at a bus stop. She turned back to her assistant, as if he had never existed. "Let's go. We're late for the Tokyo board call." She and Sarah walked into the building. The chauffeur closed the door behind them. Victor stood alone under the rain, his whole body trembling. The humiliation at the gala, the firing, the eviction. None of it compared to this. Being looked at with such complete, crushing indifference. He was so far beneath her, he wasn't even worthy of being an enemy. He was simply irrelevant. His coffee cup crumpled in his hand. The bus pulled up, its brakes hissing. He didn't get on. He stood there, staring at the empty curb where the Maybach had been, soaking in the cold, hard rain. Final thoughts and call to action. And that is the end of our story, everyone. A brutal lesson in why you should never, ever confuse kindness with weakness or privacy with lack of power. Victor thought he was the shark in the pond, but he was just a goldfish swimming in her ocean. She gave him the world, and he insulted her in it. So she did the only thing she could. She took it all back. Was Amelia's ultimate revenge too harsh? Or did Victor get exactly what he deserved? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. If you love stories of justice, dramatic twists, and powerful characters who get the last word, then you've come to the right place. Click the like button if you enjoyed this story, and share it with someone else who loves a good dose of drama. Most importantly, make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell. We release new, gripping stories like this every week, and you don't want to miss what's coming next. Thanks for listening.